On a cloudy morning in southern India, a Jet Airways 737 is struggling to see the landing runway. Low clouds cover the airfield of Kochi, and the crew of a Boeing 737 is forced to go around without ever making visual contact with the runway. So far so good, that can happen to any crew on any given day. But this flight is special. At the end of the day, the pilots of Jet Airways 555 performed not one, not two, not three, but a total of 6 go-arounds before performing a desperate and final 7th approach, while running out of fuel. Let's find out what happened here in this most unusual case. Welcome to Airspace. Jet Airways 555 departed Doha in Qatar shortly after midnight on the 17th of August 2015. The night flight was bound for Kochi in southern India and was due to land there at around 6 in the morning. After completing an uneventful cruise phase, the 2 pilots of the Boeing 737 prepared for their approach in Kochi. Air traffic control let them know that runway 27 was in use and that they were to fly an ILS approach. This type of approach procedure allows for a descent to about 200 feet above the ground without visual contact. At this point, which is called the decision altitude, the runway or the approach lighting must be in sight so that an approach may be completed. Initially, everything looked good to the crew. The weather report indicated that there was a visibility of 3,500 meters, some haze and few clouds at 1,500 feet, which is far from the lowest permissible values of 650 meters and 320 feet for that approach. When the 2 pilots attempted to land, however, they found that the weather was a lot worse than the report had indicated. When they finally arrived at an altitude of 320 feet, they were unable to see the runway or its lighting and therefore went around, as is the standard procedure for this case. At this time, they still had 4.7 tons of fuel left, which is plenty. After having gone around, the 2 pilots discussed what to do next. They could either try another approach and hope that the weather improved a bit in the meantime, or they could divert to their alternate airport, which they had defined as Bangalore, about 200 nautical miles, that's 230 miles or 375 kilometers away. The weather at Bangalore was fine and would have permitted for an effortless landing. Knowing that they still had 4.7 tons of fuel and the diversion to that airport would use only 3.3 tons, the pilots opted to attempt another approach at Kochi. The captain also remarked that Bangalore was quite far away and they could also pick Trivandrum as an alternate airport. This airfield was much closer to them, just about 100 nautical miles away instead of 200 to Bangalore. The first officer, however, noted that Trivandrum offered only a VOR approach, which would not allow them to land if the visibility would drop to low levels. To resolve their discussion, the crew obtained the weather report of Trivandrum, which indicated that there was a visibility of 3,000 meters. That would have permitted them to carry out said VOR approach, but only just. Eventually, the pilots decided to delay their decision where to divert in case their second approach would be uneventful and began said second ILS approach at Kochi. But unfortunately, this one was unsuccessful too, as the crew was unable to see the runway at the decision altitude. They performed another missed approach. In the meantime, other aircraft also had difficulties sighting the runway and also went around. This was communicated to Jet Airways 555 by air traffic control. Still, the captain opted to fly a third approach instead of diverting to Bangalore. The weather had not improved in the meantime. No, it had even become worse. Air traffic control even reported low-hanging clouds in the final approach path, but the crew of the Boeing 737 ignored that advice and attempted their third approach to Kochi. It was, expectedly, unsuccessful and resulted in the third go-round of the day. The fuel remaining was now only 2,600 kilograms, which was the exact fuel required to reach their new alternate destination of Trivandrum with reserves to spare. Bangalore was out of reach by now. Immediately, the pilots requested to divert to Trivandrum, where they hoped that the weather would be better. Their request was granted and quickly they were on their way. In the meantime, however, the weather at Trivandrum had deteriorated too. This was even communicated to the air traffic controllers at Kochi, but they never relayed that info to Jet Airways 555. When the pilots initiated radio communications with Trivandrum, they were quickly informed that the visibility there had dropped to 1,500 meters, which was too low to expect a reasonable chance of completing a successful approach. Nevertheless, the crew started a VOR approach to runway 14. This type of approach is less precise than the ILS approach available at Kochi, therefore it allows a descent only to about 600 feet. This is achieved about 3.3 kilometers from the airport. Remember that the visibility was reported to be 1,500 meters? You can see where this goes. The crew had to abort that approach as well and performed their 4th go-round of the day. At this time, the fuel on board dropped below 1,300 kilograms, which corresponded to the final reserve. This final reserve is a legal requirement for pilots to carry in their aircraft. It corresponds to 30 minutes of flight near an airport. It must always be present after landing and must not be touched. If pilots of a flight ever find themselves so low in fuel that they have to use their final reserve, they are legally required to declare Mayday due to low fuel and must land as soon as possible. The pilots of Jet Airways 555 now found themselves in that situation and indeed declared Mayday fuel. After declaring an emergency, air traffic control will clear an aircraft in distress for almost anything, as long as it helps the crew. The captain made use of this and now, for whatever reason, requested a visual approach to runway 14. In weather that did not even permit him to see the runway after completing an instrument approach, I really wonder how he thought this was a good idea. The crew then took the 737 around the airport in a normal square traffic pattern and lined it up with runway 14 for another approach, this time without instrument guidance, officially by visual clues only. In reality, the captain couldn't see anything but cloudy grey, and he lined the aircraft up using his navigation displays only. These showed him an approximate GPS position, but this info is usually not enough to fly an approach in weather this bad. As can be expected in hindsight, this attempt too was unsuccessful as the crew sighted the runway late, realizing that they were high and not correctly aligned with the runway. So they went around for a 5th time. The captain decided to attempt the same not quite visual approach again, and again it failed for the same reasons. A 6th go-round was performed while the 737 was starting to run on fumes, now having only 660 kilograms of fuel on board. Soon, the engines would start flaming out. The captain knew this and saw that he had only one last option. He opted to fly a teardrop-shaped visual approach to runway 32, which is the same runway but approaching from the other side. He flew this approach at only 700 feet above the ground, which is incredibly low, especially in such inclement weather conditions. The ground proximity warning system started blaring, issuing terrain warnings first, then pull-up warnings too. These are the last line of defense, warning a pilot that he is about to crash and that he should stop whatever he is doing and climb to safety immediately. But the captain of Jet Airways 555 did not have this luxury anymore due to the lack of fuel. He kept approaching the airport with the ground proximity warning system now issuing terrain and bank angle warnings. After a wild ride, 2 hours and 6 go-rounds, the captain slammed the aircraft onto runway 32 in near zero visibility conditions and brought the aircraft to a safe stop. Nobody was injured and the aircraft was not damaged either. When it arrived at the gate, the fuel tank indication read 350 kilograms. This is in a range where the engines could have quit every second. After the fact, Jet Airways duly reported the incident to the relevant authorities. When the pilots were interviewed, they explained that they were unsure how many approaches they should have attempted before diverging, as their manuals don't provide any guidelines in that regard. And indeed, when the investigators took a closer look at the pilot manuals of Jet Airways, they found that no such guidance existed in them. Eventually, the board concluded that the lack of such an information was the probable cause of this incident, since pilots therefore couldn't know how many attempts were a reasonable number. I find that conclusion somewhat strange. Yes, pilots need clear guidance on these things, but why would someone attempt so many approaches in the same or worse weather conditions? Let me know what you would have done in the comments below. So, what could the pilots have done differently? Yes, I know, hindsight is always perfect, but I'd like to give you a few examples. To me, it's perfectly reasonable to attempt to land twice. Who knows, maybe they were just very unlucky and the cloud drifted to their position just as they were attempting to land the first time. But after the second attempt, I don't see the need to try for a third time. Instead, that would have been the perfect time to divert to Bangalore, a sizable airport with good weather. Sure, delays would have resulted for the passengers, but rather be delayed than in an emergency, wouldn't you agree? I don't know about the fate of the 2 pilots, but I can imagine the pair is no longer flying today. As for Jet Airways, the airline continued operating until April 2019, when it ceased operations due to a lack of funds. And that was the story of Jet Airways 555 that came very close to disaster. If you'd like to see another interesting video, check out my story on Aeroflot 593 that crashed in Russia due to a kid at the controls. A special thanks also to my patrons on Patreon. You guys make these videos possible. That said, thank you and see you all in the next one.